The assembly hall floated in the darkness of space like a metal flower. It was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. 4,000 species had come together to create it, and 4,000 species now filled its seats. They had gathered to decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the hall. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Above her, rising in endless circles, sat the representatives of the galaxy. Some had scales, some had feathers, some were made of light or gas or things she could not name. All of them were looking down at her. The Velthari high priest spoke first. His species looked like tall insects with golden shells. They had been part of the galactic community for 50,000 years. Humanity had been here for only 73. The humans have committed a grave crime, the high priest said. His voice echoed through the hall. Their mining colony on Kepler 442b has destroyed our sacred burial grounds. The bones of our ancestors, resting for 10,000 years, have been turned to dust. Elena stepped forward. We did not know, she said. Our surveys showed no signs of your people. We offer our deepest apologies. We will pay any price to make this right. The high priest made a sound like breaking glass. It was laughter. You cannot pay for what you have done, he said. We do not want your money. We do not want your apologies. We want correction. Elena felt her blood turn cold. She knew what that word meant. Every species in the galaxy knew what that word meant. Correction was death. Not just for the colonists. Not just for one planet. Correction meant the end of a species. It meant bombs falling on Earth. It meant sterilization of every human colony. It meant making sure no human child would ever be born again. Please, Elena said. There must be another way. We will relocate. We will give you anything. We will serve your people for 1,000 years, if that is what you ask. The assembly stirred. Whispers passed between the representatives. But the Velthari high priest raised his hand for silence. The young species always beg, he said. They do not understand that some crimes cannot be forgiven. Your kind has been part of this galaxy for less than a single Velthari lifetime. You are infants. You are accidents. The galaxy will not miss you. Elena looked up at the thousands of faces watching her. Some looked away. Some showed what might have been pity. But none of them spoke in her defense. We will vote, announced the Supreme Arbiter, a being made of crystalline light. All in favor of species correction for humanity. The lights began to change. Each seat had a small beacon that would glow red for yes or blue for no. Elena watched as the red lights spread like fire across the assembly. Row after row. Level after level. Red, red, red. When it was done, the Supreme Arbiter spoke the numbers. 3,847 in favor. 12 against. The motion passes. Humanity will be corrected within one galactic cycle, 6 months. They had given humanity 6 months to live. Elena stood very still. Around her, the assembly began to move. Representatives talked among themselves. Some were already leaving. For them, this was just another vote. Another piece of business finished before lunch. Something strange happened inside Elena's chest. It started as pressure, then heat, then something that pushed up through her throat. She opened her mouth and laughed. The sound cut through the noise of the assembly. Representatives stopped and stared. The Velthari high priest tilted his head in confusion. The human is broken, someone said. The stress has damaged her mind. But Elena was not broken. She was not crying. She was laughing because she finally understood something that the galaxy did not. You think we are infants? She said. Her voice was calm now, almost gentle. You think we are weak because we are young. You read our cultural files. You studied our music and our art. You saw that we paint pictures and write poetry and dream of peace. She turned slowly, looking up at all of them. But you did not read our history, did you? The assembly was silent now. Every eye and sensor and appendage was focused on the small human woman in the center of the hall. "You should have read our history," Elena said. "You should have seen what we do to each other. You should have learned about our wars. Not one war, not 10 wars, thousands of wars. Going back to the beginning of our species. We have been killing each other for 200,000 years." The Velthari high priest made a dismissive gesture. "All species have conflict in their past. This does not make you special." No, Elena agreed. "But here is what makes us special. We got better at it. Every single time. We invented new ways to kill. We built weapons that could destroy cities in a single flash. We created poisons that could end all life on our planet. And do you know what we did with those weapons?" "One." She smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We pointed them at ourselves. For 50 years, we lived with enough nuclear bombs to burn our world 100 times over. We slept every night knowing that we could all die before morning. And we did not blink. Not once. We played a game of chicken with our own extinction, and nobody backed down." The assembly was very quiet now. "You have given us 6 months, Elena said. "You think we will spend that time crying and begging. You think we will fall apart. But you do not understand what we are." She began walking toward the exit. Guards moved to stop her. But something in her eyes made them hesitate. "We are the species that survived ourselves," she said. "We are the children of every war, every plague, every disaster that should have killed us. You think you are predators, but you have never met anything like us. You have never fought something that considers extinction a normal Tuesday." She reached the door and stopped. Without turning around, she spoke her final words to the assembly. "Congratulations, Galaxy. You just declared war on the most deadly species alive. We will see you soon." The door closed behind her. The assembly sat in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to talk again. Most of them dismissed her words as the desperate threats of a doomed species, but a few of them, the older ones, the ones who had seen civilizations rise and fall, felt something cold move through their bodies. They looked at each other and wondered if they had just made a terrible mistake. In 6 months, they would have their answer. The galaxy expected humanity to panic. They expected riots in the streets. They expected millions of refugees trying to escape to neutral space. They expected desperate calls for mercy, governments falling apart, and chaos spreading across every human world. None of that happened. Instead, something far more terrifying occurred. Humanity went quiet. On the 3rd day after the verdict, all human communication channels went dark. Trade ships returned to port and did not leave again. Embassies closed their doors. Scientists at joint research stations packed their things and left without saying goodbye. Within 1 week, it was as if humanity had simply disappeared. The Galactic Intelligence Network sent spies to human space. Most of them never reported back. The few that did sent confused messages. The humans were not fighting each other. They were not running. They were not crying. They were building. Deep beneath Luna, Earth's moon, General Yuki Tanaka stood before the United Terran Defense Council. The room was carved from solid rock, protected by a mile of stone and metal. Every military leader on Earth was present, either in person or through secure hologram. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tanaka said, "the galaxy has made a mistake." They looked at us and saw poets and artists. They saw a young species still learning to walk among the stars. They did not see what we really are. She pressed a button, and the wall behind her lit up with images. Ancient images. Paintings of battles. Photographs of mushroom clouds. Video of soldiers charging across muddy fields into machine gun fire. "This is what we are," Tanaka said. "We are the descendants of every human who ever killed to survive. Every war in our history taught us something. We learned how to fight in trenches. We learned how to fight in jungles. We learned how to fight in cities, in deserts, in mountains, and in snow. We learned how to fight with sticks, with swords, with guns, with bombs, and with diseases." She changed the image to show a graph. It showed the number of human deaths in wars throughout history. The line went up and up and up. We spent the last 300 years trying to forget what we are, she continued. We built peaceful societies. We created art and music. We told ourselves that we had evolved past violence. But we did not evolve. We simply chose to sleep. Now, the galaxy has woken us up. Admiral Chen, commander of the Space Fleet, spoke up. What are our numbers, General? As of this morning, we have received 11 billion volunteers for military service. The room went silent. Earth's total population was 12 billion. That cannot be correct, someone said. That would mean almost everyone who can fight has volunteered. The number is correct, Tanaka replied. I checked it 3 times. Our recruitment AI thought it was a calculation error. It was not. 11 billion humans have looked at the choice between fighting and dying, and they have chosen to fight. She smiled, and there was something ancient in her eyes, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. The Velthari think they are predators. They have never been prey. They do not know what it means to fight for survival. But we do. It is written in our bones. It is coded in our blood. When humans are threatened, we do not run. We do not hide. We become something else entirely. Across human space, the forges came alive. On Mars, factories that had been closed for 200 years opened their doors. These were not normal factories. They had been built during the last great human war, designed to produce weapons at a speed the galaxy had never imagined. The machines were old, but they still worked. Within days, they were producing warships. On Earth, scientists pulled ancient files from secure archives. Weapon designs that had been banned centuries ago. Biological agents. Chemical compounds. Psychological warfare techniques. Things that humanity had locked away and tried to forget. Now, they remembered. In the asteroid belt, mining stations stopped digging for minerals and started building bombs. Not small bombs. Planet-killing bombs. The kind of weapons that most species could not even imagine building. And in secret laboratories on a dozen hidden moons, the most brilliant minds in human history worked on something new. They took alien technology and combined it with human creativity. They asked a simple question. What is the most terrible thing we can build? The answers were terrifying. On Earth, old soldiers came out of retirement. Men and women who had fought in humanity's last wars, back when humans still fought each other. They were gray and wrinkled, but their eyes were sharp. They began training the young. The aliens think war is about technology, one old sergeant told his recruits. They think the side with better ships and bigger guns always wins. They are wrong. War is about will. It is about how much pain you can take and keep going. It is about looking death in the face and spitting in its eye. He held up his hand. 3 fingers were missing. I lost these in the Jakarta campaign, 60 years ago. You know what I did after they were gone? I kept fighting. I killed 4 men with my remaining hand before they pulled me off the field. That is what humans do. We do not stop. We do not surrender. We do not know how. The recruits listened. They learned. And deep in their hearts, something old and dangerous began to wake up. 5 months after the verdict, a galactic intelligence report finally reached the Concord Assembly. The spy who wrote it had managed to escape human space just before the borders closed completely. His report was short. They are not preparing to defend themselves. They are preparing to attack. I have seen their factories. I have seen their weapons. I have seen the look in their eyes. These are not the peaceful artists we thought we knew. These are predators. They have been sleeping among us, pretending to be sheep. Now they are awake, and they are hungry. I recommend immediate surrender. I am not joking. God help us all. The Concord dismissed the report as exaggeration. The Velthari high priest laughed when he read it. A young species with less than a century of space travel, threatening the combined might of 4,000 civilizations? Impossible. 1 month remained before the correction fleet would launch. On Earth, General Tanaka stood on a balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was waiting. They thought they were about to kill humanity. They had no idea that humanity was about to teach them what killing really meant. They wanted war, Tanaka whispered to the night sky. They are going to get more war than they ever imagined. And when it is over, the galaxy will never forget what happens when you threaten the human race. She turned and walked back inside. There was still work to do. Weapons to build. Soldiers to train. Plans to make. The beast was awake. And it was very, very angry. Admiral Vrethkol watched his fleet drop out of hyperspace above the human colony world of New Helsinki. 200 warships, the pride of the Velthari Correction Armada, spread across the darkness like silver knives. Below them, a small blue planet turned slowly in the light of its sun. Scan the planet, Vrethkol ordered. Show me what we are dealing with. The tactical display filled with data. Population: 3 million humans. Orbital defenses: minimal. Military vessels detected: 12 small patrol ships. Threat assessment: negligible. Vrethkol made a satisfied clicking sound. Standard correction protocol: we will be finished before dinner. His communications officer spoke up. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled. Then a voice came through. It was a human child, a little girl by the sound of it. She was reciting something in a calm, steady voice. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The transmission ended. Vrethkol tilted his head. What was that? Unknown, Admiral. Perhaps a prayer? Their species has many strange rituals before death. No matter. Begin the approach. Launch fighters. I want this finished quickly. The Velthari fleet moved forward. 200 ships in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. They had done this before. Many times. Correction was routine. The first mine detonated against the lead cruiser. Vrethkol watched in confusion as his flagship's shields flared under impact. Then another explosion. And another. And another. All around the fleet. Space itself seemed to come alive with fire. Where are those coming from? He demanded. Stealth mines, Admiral. Thousands of them. They must have seeded the entire orbital approach. Ships began to die. The mines were small, but they were everywhere. They punched through shields and tore open hulls. Escape pods launched into space, only to be hit by more mines. The beautiful formation became chaos. Push through, Vrethkol ordered. We have 200 ships. A few mines cannot stop us. They pushed through. But the mines were only the beginning. As the surviving ships cleared the minefield, weapons platforms activated. Hidden among asteroid debris and disguised as space junk, hundreds of railgun satellites opened fire. Solid metal slugs, accelerated to incredible speeds, ripped through Velthari armor like paper. And then the human fleet arrived. Not 12 patrol ships. 1,200 warships, pouring out of hidden positions behind New Helsinki's moons. They were not beautiful ships. They were ugly and brutal and covered in weapons. And they flew like nothing Vrethkol had ever seen. Admiral, they are using ramming tactics. Vrethkol watched in horror as a human destroyer, its engines on fire, drove directly into a Velthari battlecruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of white light. The human crew had not even tried to escape. They had steered into the collision on purpose. They are insane, someone whispered. Another human ship, badly damaged, ejected its reactor core at a Velthari carrier. The core exploded with the force of a small star. 3 more Velthari ships were caught in the blast. What are they doing? Vrethkol demanded. Do they not understand that they are killing themselves? His tactical officer's voice was shaking. Admiral, I do not think they care. The battle in space lasted 4 hours. When it was over, Vrethkol had lost 131 ships. The humans had lost more, but they had saved their planet, and the Velthari had never experienced anything like it. We still have 69 ships, Vrethkol said, trying to steady his voice. We will proceed with ground correction. Launch the landing forces. 20,000 Velthari soldiers descended to New Helsinki in dropships. They expected to face a civilian population, frightened and defenseless. They expected surrender. The first dropship exploded before it touched the ground. Someone had hidden a missile launcher in a children's playground. The Velthari soldiers who made it to the surface found a nightmare waiting for them. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a kill zone. Every human, from the oldest grandmother to the youngest child who could hold a weapon, was fighting. A squad of Velthari elite soldiers breached a school building. They expected to find civilians hiding inside. Instead, they found that the entire building had been converted into a maze of traps, tripwires connected to explosives, floors that collapsed into pits filled with spikes, and in the shadows, small figures with old rifles, picking off soldiers one by one. The squad leader, a veteran of 30 correction operations, sent a desperate message to his commander. The children are fighting us. The children. They are using the ventilation systems to move around. They know every corner of this building. We have lost half our squad to a group of humans who cannot be older than 12 years. It took the Velthari 3 days to capture a single city block. They lost 8,000 soldiers in the process. On the 4th day, Vrethkul received a transmission from a human commander. The human was a woman with short gray hair and a scar across her face. She was smiling. "Admiral," she said, "you have taken 1 city block. That is impressive. There are 400 more blocks in this city. There are 62 cities on this planet. And every single one of them is just like this one." She leaned closer to the camera. "We will not surrender. We will not run. We will make you pay for every inch of our world in blood. And when your soldiers are dead and your ships are burning, we will still be here, waiting, fighting, because that is what humans do." She ended the transmission. Vrethkul sat in his command chair for a long time. He thought about his orders. He thought about the 4,000 species waiting for news of victory. He thought about what the galaxy expected him to do. Then he ordered the retreat. His fleet limped back to Velthari space with 31 surviving ships. His ground forces had been cut in half, and he had not even come close to completing the correction. When he arrived at the Concord station, he was summoned before the assembly to explain his failure. He stood where Ambassador Vasquez had stood, looking up at the same 4,000 species. But now, the mood was different. Now, there was fear in the air. "You had 200 ships," the Supreme Arbiter said. "You faced a minor colony. How is this possible?" Vrethkul's voice was hollow. "They are not like us. They do not fight to win. They fight to make you bleed for every inch, until you no longer want what you came for. They would rather die than surrender, and they make sure that dying is very, very expensive for their enemies." He looked up at the assembly. At the Velthari High Priest. At all the species who had voted for humanity's extinction. "I have fought in 30 correction operations. I have destroyed species you have never even heard of. And I am telling you now, we cannot win this war. Not the way we are fighting it. They are too angry, too willing to sacrifice, too creative in their violence." The High Priest made an angry sound. "This is cowardice. We will send more ships." "We will send all the ships you want," Vrethkul interrupted. "It will not matter. You are thinking of this as a correction operation. The humans are thinking of it as a war for survival. There is a difference." He turned and walked out of the assembly hall. Behind him, the galaxy finally began to understand what Ambassador Vasquez had tried to tell them. They had read humanity's poetry. They had studied humanity's art. But they had skipped humanity's history, and now they were living it. The galaxy expected humanity to celebrate their victory at New Helsinki. They expected the humans to stay behind their borders, happy to have survived the first attack. They expected a defensive war. They were wrong. 2 weeks after the Battle of New Helsinki, human ships appeared in Velthari space. Not a fleet. Just 3 small vessels, moving fast and quiet. They slipped past defense stations and disappeared into the shadows between stars. 3 days later, the Velthari homeworld lost power. Every computer on the planet crashed at once. Banking systems, transportation networks, military communications, life support and orbital stations, all of it went dark. The virus that killed their systems was elegant and brutal. Velthari programmers spent weeks trying to remove it. Every time they thought they had succeeded, it came back. On the fourth day, messages began appearing on screens across the planet. Human messages. They were not threats. They were worse. Your leaders voted to kill our children. Ask them why. Ask them what they were really afraid of. The messages included documents, communications between the Velthari High Priest and other assembly members, secret deals, hidden agendas. The burial ground incident, it turned out, had been an excuse. The Velthari had wanted humanity destroyed because human ships were faster, human factories more productive, human traders more successful. The High Priest had been afraid that in another century, humanity would dominate galactic commerce. Riots erupted on Velthari Prime. While the Velthari dealt with their own people, human fleets struck at military targets across the galaxy. They did not attack homeworlds or civilian populations. They hit shipyards, fuel depots, communication relay stations. They cut the galaxy's ability to coordinate and fight. General Tanaka met with representatives of a dozen species who had secretly contacted Earth. These were the 12 who had voted against humanity's destruction. They were scared, but they were also smart. They knew which side was winning. "You are not fighting like any species we have ever seen," said Ambassador Krill, an insectoid being from the Mantis Collective. "Your tactics make no sense to us." "But they work," Tanaka smiled. "We fight wars to end wars. Most species fight to gain something: territory, resources, pride. We fight to make sure our enemies can never threaten us again. We are not trying to defeat the Concord. We are trying to break it." "What is the difference?" "When you defeat an enemy, they surrender and wait for a chance to fight again. When you break an enemy, they lose the will to fight entirely. They become so afraid of war that they will do anything to avoid it." Ambassador Krill's antennae twitched. "That is a terrifying philosophy." "Yes," Tanaka agreed. "It is. We learned it from ourselves. We have done this to each other many times. We know exactly how much pain it takes to break a civilization's spirit, and we are very good at delivering that pain." Human tactics continued to shock the galaxy. Stealth ships deployed engineered plagues against military targets. The diseases were not lethal. They caused weeks of weakness and confusion. Entire armies became useless without a single shot being fired. Psychological warfare units broadcast messages designed by experts who had studied each species' fears. The Velthari, it turned out, were terrified of darkness. Human ships began attacking only at night, using weapons that made no sound and left no trace. Velthari soldiers stopped sleeping. False information spread through galactic networks. Species that had been allies for millennia began to suspect each other of betrayal. The humans did not even have to create all the lies, they just revealed true secrets that the assembly members had been hiding from each other. And then there were the ghost fleets. Thousands of automated ships, controlled by artificial intelligence, appeared throughout the galaxy. They were cheap and expendable, built in human factories that never stopped working. They did not attack important targets. They attacked everything else. Supply lines, patrol routes, communication buoys. The conquered had to defend everywhere at once. Their forces stretched thin and thinner. Every time they concentrated their fleet in one place, the humans struck somewhere else. 8 months into the war, the Concord Emergency Assembly convened. Half the seats were empty. Some species had surrendered to humanity. Others had simply stopped answering calls. The mighty alliance of 4,000 civilizations was falling apart. A Concord analyst, a being called Specialist Vorn, presented his findings. He was old, even by galactic standards, and he had spent his entire life studying war. "I have read human history," he said. His voice was tired. "All of it. Every war they ever fought. Every weapon they ever built. Every strategy they ever created." He looked up at the remaining assembly members. "They have been fighting each other for 200,000 years. Every generation invented new ways to kill. They developed weapons of mass destruction before they developed space travel. They created concepts like mutually assured destruction and total war that we do not even have words for in most galactic languages. He brought up an image on the display. It showed human soldiers from different eras, primitive warriors with spears, knights in armor, soldiers with rifles, pilots in fighter jets. "Look at them," Vorn said. "Every generation, fighting and dying and learning. We thought we were the ancient ones. We thought our civilizations were mature and wise, but in war, they are older than all of us combined. They have forgotten more about killing than we will ever learn." The Velthari high priest stood up. "Then what do you suggest? Surrender?" Vorn was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I suggest we understand what we are actually fighting. This is not a young species learning to defend itself. This is an apex predator that has been pretending to be prey. We woke it up, and now it is hunting us." On Velthari Prime, the civil unrest had turned into revolution. The high priest's government fell. The new leaders immediately sent peace offers to Earth. Humanity did not respond. They were too busy. Human Marines had landed on 17 Concord military stations. They did not kill the defenders, they captured them. They treated prisoners well, fed them, gave them medical care, and then they sent them home with a message. "Tell your people what you saw. Tell them that we could have killed you, but we chose not to. Tell them that this war can end whenever they want it to end. All they have to do is say that they were wrong." The returned prisoners spread the message. On world after world, populations began demanding peace. The humans, they said, were not monsters. The humans were something more frightening than monsters. They were in control. General Tanaka watched the war reports from her command center on Luna. 30 species had surrendered. 50 more were negotiating. The Concorde was crumbling. An aide approached her. "General, we could end this quickly. If we destroyed a few homeworlds." "No." Tanaka's voice was sharp. "We are not going to become what they think we are. We could burn this galaxy to ash. We have the weapons. We have the will, but that is not who we want to be." She looked at the star map, at the red dots marking enemy positions, at the green dots marking human victories. "We win this war by being better than them. Not more violent, more controlled, more precise. We show them that we could destroy them but choose not to. That is more terrifying than any bomb. That is how we make sure no one ever threatens us again." The aide nodded slowly. "They will fear us." "Yes," Tanaka said. "But more importantly, they will respect us. Fear fades. Respect lasts. And respect is what will keep our children safe for the next 1,000 years." She turned back to the war. There was still work to do. But for the first time since the verdict, she allowed herself to believe that humanity was going to survive. Not just survive. Triumph. 2 years after the verdict, Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked back into the Galactic Assembly Hall. She wore the same gray suit she had worn on that terrible day. Her hair was a little whiter, her eyes a little harder. But she was alive. Humanity was alive. The hall was almost empty now. More than half the seats were dark, representing species that had surrendered, collapsed, or simply disappeared during the war. The remaining representatives watched her in silence as she took her place at the center of the room. The Supreme Arbiter spoke first. "Ambassador Vasquez, the Galactic Concord wishes to discuss terms of peace." Elena looked around the hall. She saw the Velthari High Priest's seat. Empty. He had been removed by his own people months ago. She saw the faces of species who had cheered for humanity's death. Now, they looked at her with fear. "You want peace," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, the Concord is prepared to offer significant concessions. Territory, resources, technology. Name your demands." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Every eye in the hall was on her. They expected her to ask for everything. They expected punishment, revenge, the destruction of their homeworlds, just as they had planned to destroy Earth. "We want 3 things," she said finally. "First, recognition. Humanity will have full and equal status in any galactic government. We will never again be called a young species, or denied a voice in decisions that affect us. The Arbiter nodded. Agreed. Second, reparations. Not to Earth, to the families of every human who died in this war. Every widow. Every orphan. Every parent who buried their child. The money will not bring back the dead, but it will remind you of what your decision cost. Agreed. Third, a seat at this table. Not 1 seat, 10 seats. We want enough votes that no one can ever do to another species what you tried to do to us. There was murmuring in the hall. 10 seats was more than any species had ever held. It would give humanity significant power in galactic politics. But then someone spoke up. You could ask for more. You have beaten us. You could demand that we serve you. You could take our worlds, our ships, our resources. Why do you ask for so little? Elena turned to face the speaker. It was a young Velthari diplomat, one of the new government's representatives. He looked genuinely confused. Because we do not want to rule you, Elena said. We never did. We wanted to explore the stars, trade with your people, learn from your cultures. We wanted to be friends. But you decided we were not worthy of friendship. You decided we were vermin to be exterminated. She walked closer to him. We showed you what happens when you threaten our existence. We could have burned your worlds. We could have wiped your species from history. We had the power. But we chose not to use it. Do you understand what that means? The young Velthari shook his head. It means that our mercy is a choice, not a weakness. It means that we are giving you a chance to exist alongside us, as equals. But it also means that if you ever threaten our children again, we will not hold back a second time. She returned to the center of the hall. Peace has a price. This time, the price is respect. Learn to see us as equals, and we will be the best friends you ever had. Forget this lesson, and you will discover that we have not forgotten how to be enemies. The Concord voted to accept humanity's terms. The war was over. On New Helsinki, the colony that had suffered the first attack, they built a memorial. It was a simple wall of black stone, stretching across a field where children used to play. On the wall were carved the names of every human who died in the war. Soldiers, civilians, children, old people, millions of names. Below the names, in letters 10 feet tall, was an inscription. It had been translated into 4,000 languages so that anyone in the galaxy could read it. We asked for peace. You chose war. Remember what peace costs when you refuse it. Representatives from across the galaxy came to see the memorial. They stood before that wall of names and understood, perhaps for the first time, what they had done, and what had been done to them in return. General Tanaka retired after the war. She spent her remaining years visiting veterans' hospitals, talking to the soldiers who had fought under her command. Many of them were broken in ways that did not show on the outside. They had done terrible things to win the war, necessary things. But necessity did not erase the nightmares. One young Marine asked her the question that haunted all of them. General, how do we live with what we are? What we did? Tanaka sat with him for a long time before answering. We build, she said finally. We build schools and hospitals and stations where children from 100 species can play together. We build trade routes and research labs and gardens. We build until the universe sees us as creators instead of destroyers. We build until we can look in the mirror and see something other than warriors. She took his hand. The war proved what we can do when we have to fight. Now we have to prove what we can do when we choose to build. That is the real test. That is how we earn the peace we won. In the outer reaches of the galaxy, far from human space, ancient beings watched and recorded. They called themselves the Archivists. Their species had existed for millions of years, watching civilizations rise and fall. They did not interfere. They only observed and remembered. The chief archivist updated their records on humanity. The file had grown considerably since first contact. Species classification: Homo sapiens. Origin. Sol system. Third planet. Status. Major galactic power. Threat assessment. Maximum. Do not engage under any circumstances. Notes. This species presents a unique contradiction. They create art of extraordinary beauty. They dream of peace. They build societies based on cooperation and kindness. And yet, when threatened, they become the most dangerous beings we have ever recorded. They have no psychological ceiling for violence. They are capable of destroying themselves and consider this an acceptable outcome if it means destroying their enemies as well. They have survived extinction-level events, ice ages, plagues, and nuclear standoffs with themselves. Most importantly, they choose mercy. This is not weakness. A predator that can kill but chooses not to is more dangerous than one that kills without thinking. Humanity knows what it is capable of. They simply prefer not to be that thing. Recommendation. Approach with extreme respect. Never threaten their young. Never give them a reason to remember what they truly are. Oder des Geistes. Croster 2. The archivist added a personal observation at the end, something they almost never did. In all our millions of years of watching, we have never seen a species like this. They are not monsters, that is what makes them so frightening. They are survivors. They have survived everything, including themselves. And they will survive whatever comes next. The galaxy has learned an important lesson. We can only hope they remember it. 10 years after the war ended, a human girl and a Velthari child played together on a space station. The station orbited a world that had once been a Velthari colony, now shared by both species. The children were building a tower out of colored blocks. The Velthari child looked up. "My grandmother told me about the war. She said humans are very scary." The human girl shrugged. "We had to fight because your people wanted to hurt us. But we don't like fighting. We like building things. Like this tower." She added another block. "My mom says that if you don't want to fight someone, you have to make sure they don't want to fight you either. So we showed everyone that fighting us is a bad idea. Now no one wants to fight, so we can all build towers instead." The Velthari child thought about this. It was a simple explanation, but it made sense. "I'm glad we're not fighting anymore," the Velthari child said. "Me too." The human girl smiled. Building is more fun than fighting, and the towers last longer. They went back to their blocks. Above them, through the station windows, the stars turned slowly in the endless dark. The galaxy moved on with its business. Species traded and argued and made alliances, but they never forgot. In every council, chamber, and military academy, in every history book and warning database, the same lesson was repeated. The same story was told. Do not threaten humanity. Do not attack their homes. Do not endanger their children, because if you do, they will come for you. And they will not stop until